Hello, folks, and welcome back. This is Let's Talk Radio with Robert Vaughn and our host, Mike Shomo, and our other host, Veroma Majid. Today, we have a very special guest. Genevieve Mitchell is joining us tonight. And Genevieve is a longtime community activist, born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio. She did reside briefly in Los Angeles, but she came back. So it's something good about Cleveland, I guess. When she returned to Cleveland, she was an executive for the city of Cleveland. She then became involved in local politics, community activism. She was actually president of the school board, vice president of the school board at one time, and she was a reporter for the Crusader News. She was a co-host on the Carl Stokes Forum, which was a cable news show. She's a founder of the Black Woman Center, a nonprofit from 1991 till president. She attended Beaumont High School, which is it's a top-rated Catholic girls' school in Cleveland, if you're not familiar.
Exclusive.
Yeah, the exclusive. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And she recently attended a protest and rally in Washington, D.C. to fight against voter suppression bills. So she is truly an activist, not just a verbal activist, but an actual community activist that is active and gets involved in politics. This bill, HB 294, and others like it, seek to make it harder for the poor, the elderly, people of color, and other marginalized people to vote and participate in a political process. And if you've been watching the news, or if you haven't been living under a rock, you know, everything now is about Biden's agenda, and his agenda really, the agenda of this country depends upon the ability of people to vote. And this is what is being attacked. So it's extremely important. I can't overemphasize how important it is. Recently, 14 states have enacted 22 laws that restrict voting access, and at least 61 bills with restrictive provisions that are moving through legislatures as we speak. Ms. Mitchell continues to fight for the rights of the common man. And we appreciate it because she's a true leader. She's not on the payroll, anybody's payroll. She's not beholden to anyone. She actually does what, is in her heart. So that's refreshing to see. And all of you are from Cleveland can understand where I'm coming from. But without further hesitation, I just want to ask her, Jenny, you've been around for a while. And, we all kind of grew up pretty much in the same geographical area of Cleveland. What I want to know, in 1920, Cleveland was the richest city in the world. How did we wind up where we're at now?
Robert, it's hard to say. I think it's a conglomeration of a lot of different elements that have created the commiserate condition that the city is in right now. I think it has a lot to do with personalities and people and priorities, or the lack thereof.
Is it a lack of leadership, or
It's indicative of a lack of leadership,
okay,
or just gross unconcern about the conditions, the life conditions of the people that reside in this city on the east and west side. However, the west siders are taken care of quite a bit better than the east side. There is that polarized, racialized demographic that is so much a part of this city, has been so much a part of this city, and it has been under the thumb of, from time to time, criminal elements, white supremacists, racist, people that just don't care. And we see all of that manifesting itself in the conditions of the housing, the conditions of the education system. There are problems associated with, if you look at the cost of rents right now, it's astronomical at a time when we are coming out of a global pandemic, which has lasted it's still in effect technically, and it had lasted in its most ferocious form for 18 months, where people had to be subsidized nationally by the federal government in order to enable them to move forward, or just kind of hang in there. And
Hold
so,
on.
now we see a lot of those kinds of assistance being lifted, and we're going to see, just unless something is done at the federal level, we're going to see just a dearth of problems associated with this. Massive evictions is a possibility. Um, you know, Food insecurity will be a possibility. Greater homelessness, all of the things that existed before have been amplified and exacerbated as a result of the pandemic and the restrictions. People couldn't go to work. They couldn't send their kids to school for 18 months. The colleges and universities were shut down. Um, a lot of people were working remotely from home, but a lot of people lost their jobs. And many of those were women with children and single women who relied on their own incomes for their livelihood, their own independence, and they've been pushed back financially. So there's a lot of problems associated with it. I'm sorry, Mr. Blueshmaw.
All right, Verl, you wanna follow up?
Yeah, Jenny, I was just going to say, recently you and busload of other activists were in D.C. dealing with the voter suppression rules. What did you get out of that? What do you think was accomplished, and what work still needs to be done?
Well, all of that was a result of Reverend Dr. William J. Barber and Reverend Dr. Liz Theoharis. Initially, back in 2018, they took 1,000 activists from around the country, and we converged on Trinity University. Some of us were put up over at Howard, for lodging, but the epicenter took place at Trinity, where Reverend Barber and Reverend Dr. Liz Theoharis brought the majority of Democratic contenders, and I believe the Republicans were invited as well, to meet and greet these activists from around the country, who would then be deciding, after nearly 4 years of President Trump, that whether we would stay the course or vote for President Biden. And you see where the majority of the country went. They had a belief that we needed to take a new direction. But getting back to your initial question, a week before the Washington event, we went to Charleston, West Virginia, and directly to Senator Joe Manchin's offices. And there was a smaller group, but just as determined, and we were demanding that the filibuster be lifted. That's just not working for the country, to just talk ad infinitum to try to block things from moving, the business of the government from moving forward. And we were there because we knew that we needed a bipartisan initiative to push forward our right to vote, to protect our constitutional right to vote, because the Republicans were stalemating it. And so the follow-up week, we were deployed once again to Washington, D.C. this time, to go directly to the Dirksen Senate office building, where Senator Mitch McConnell and Senator Joe Manchin have their Washington offices. And when we got off the bus at Union Square, we walked over, had a little lunch, and then we went directly to the Supreme Court for the press conference. Reverend Dr. William Barber was there, and he gave strong statements about saving the soul of this nation, and that this was a moral issue, because if you take away people's right to vote, or you attempt to restrict it, you are putting together a trajectory and a conflagration of a series of events which will destroy people's constitutional rights to make choices about their own destiny. And so Barbara Arnwine was there on hand at both events. And surprisingly enough, Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson showed up, and it was so good to see him. He's 89 years old now. He's kind of being buffered by his assistant and his son, Jonathan, but it was so good to see him and hear his voice back in the mix again about these very critical issues. You know, we're talking about the constitutional right to vote. We are talking about, education in this country. We're talking about jobs and wages, how it is affecting racial groups. So all of that is a part of the Poor People's Campaign, which emanated from Trinity University. We did not get to do our follow-up, which would have been the big, huge march on Washington, because that was aborted by the COVID crisis.
Okay.
And so we just had to wait in advance. They did do a series of ongoing Zoom meetings, which drew even more people. There were like millions of people who tuned in over the course of the 18 months during COVID. But this particular one was a more intimate kind of approach, directed to Senator McConnell and Senator Joe Manchin. And it culminated after the Supreme Court. We walked over to the Dirksen building. We had a circular, or I'll say an oval march of several hundred people. And it was at that point, and it was so hot, I do remember, Reverend William Barber and Reverend Jackson walked into the street and confronted, the senators and the Washington elites, and they were summarily arrested and taken into custody. It was very interesting to be there, to see all of that take place in live time. I mean, it was something. And then after that, they were with the DC police who had doing their protocols, and so the rest of us left out of DC and came back to our regular homes and spaces. Okay. But it's important for us to show up when these things happen. You know, when they call for our cavalry, the ground troops, then it's important for us to go and to stand in solidarity with these groups, which are around the country. They've organized them. Our local group here is Noble, and anyone is welcome to come to those meetings or participate via Zoom. They're held weekly, sometimes bi-weekly, and Professor Larry Bressler of Case Western Reserve University Mandel School for Applied Social Science is the lead organizer who makes these things happen. Okay. Along with a staff that helps him to carry them out. Okay. But I'll wait for any more questions. I hope that Mike, kind of answered what
I know you had a question.
Yeah, do you think that what you're talking about is civil disobedience? As far as marching and protesting, do you think in these days and times now it's effective?
Do I think what? Can you repeat the last part of that?
Do you think it's effective, the civil disobedience?
Yes, I do. I think that, when you put anything in the court of public opinion and the media is involved, because the national media was there, it is going to have an impact. Summarily, after we finished doing what we were doing, before I even got home, I had people calling me saying, I saw the group on the evening news. I saw it on television. I saw it on, followed it on Facebook. So yes, I do believe that this kind of negotiation of the plebiscite with the powers that be does have a very strong impact. They pay attention to this, particularly as we move toward the midterms and people have to account for being reelected, and you have a white woman with a master's degree who is standing there in Charleston, West Virginia, because that was videotaped too. And she's saying that she is out of work. She cannot get a job anywhere, and she has been looking. When you have, our white brothers and sisters from around the country and the region who come and say, they are suffering. They're being evicted. They have no food. They have no place to live. Their children are out of school. All of these things are being deposited in the face of the media. So then, how then do these politicians respond who represent these people and say that they're taking care of their constituents? And there are massive throngs of people who are coming to Trinity University. They are coming to these actions in West Virginia. They are coming to Washington, D.C. and telling them that is simply not the case, Senator McConnell. That is simply not the case, Senator Manchin. We are suffering, you're aware of it, and we are tired.
One of the things that I know that went on while the pandemic is still going on now, and you're talking about the evictions, because they're coming. They've run out at the end of this middle of this week or end of this week. Or no, they've already expanded, haven't they? But they're gonna be the moratorium is gonna be over really soon or already over. I noticed that the county, you still had to pay your taxes, and that was one thing that the landlords and stuff were saying. Well, we still have to pay our taxes. No matter what, if they had, we didn't have to pay our taxes, delay them for other time and just keep on going, but they never did that. So the people, the landlords, wanted to collect their money, and they, because believe me, a lot of them understood, but they said, we still have these bills to pay, So yeah. I knew in New York, there was a property owner had a big, what they did, they took all their bills. They took all the bills that the gas, the water, whatever it was, and got with the tenants and say, okay, this is what we need to do. All you have to do is pay this amount right here, and that'll keep us going. That will keep us going. You have water, you have this, you pay your utilities, you do what you want to do, but the maintenance of the building and the things that you need to do will be done with just a minimum of payment. Divide it all up by everybody in apartments and stuff. So they just pay a minimum of that, and that worked out fine for
them. They had options. They had multiple options which were not exerted under the Trump administration, that have not yet been taken into consideration under the current administration, but definitely under President Trump. They could have easily went to Housing and Urban Development and said, this is what we're going to do. If you can send out $1,100 and $600 and $1,400 checks, and that this is part of an ongoing medical travesty that is not gone away, is not going to just go away in an instant. You could have went to Housing and Urban Development and just told everybody to just pay half rent and done a subsidy.
We had Ben Carson there who wasn't doing anything.
Well, yeah, of course, absolutely, and had no intentions of doing anything. Exactly. He carried water for the Trump administration, which was so unfortunate to see this brilliant Black man in that position where he had power and not use his power and authority to protect and to enable the individuals who were suffering to have that suffering ameliorated or alleviated. But they had options, though. They could have, done something to help both the renter and the property owner to undergird their payments. They could have worked and told the banks to stand down. Look, we're in the middle of a hell, basically. We're in the middle of a total international mess, and it's affecting money markets across the globe, not just us. And, you look at places like Canada, a friend up there who said that they were giving $2,000 a month for the entire duration of the worst part of the pandemic to cure the breach and to prevent mass homelessness and evictions and people losing their homes or their income property. They had options, and those options were not exercised. We had 3 opportunities where there was funding given out, and I thank President Biden for, and even Trump, he saw the need, but that was not enough. That was not enough to maintain economic solvency for the entire country when you were just, giving piecemeal kinds of remedies for something that was sustainable and ongoing. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what to do. You know, 5 Black women in Washington could have, and 5 white women in Washington of the right ilk could have went and solved that problem.
But I'm glad you
You know.
said something. I'm glad you said that because see, there's a lot of people that have a lot of good solutions that nobody taps into. You know, the politicians,
Right.
they think that, but they don't, enlist people to give them like, okay, some ideas of what to do or how to do this and have forums about that. They get around their buddies and their partners and they just trading off different favors. You know, so some of the people make some of the people do this, some people do that, but nevertheless, there's not a concerted effort for everybody to be, be happy and take care and pitch in and do this.
Mhm.
You know, and if they can bail
There are
these
things
banks
that
out,
they could do.
yeah.
Let me just say this real
Go ahead,
quick. The technological divide could have been, that was one of the key things to maintain financial solvency, is just to have Wi-Fi the entire country,
Right.
so that people could communicate and stay in touch. People died during this pandemic. 610,000 American citizens died. Some you couldn't go visit your loved ones in either a hospital or nursing home. People atrophied as a result of being in a clandestine social environment where they couldn't see their family members or their grandchildren or what have you. You know, they could only see them for a limited time outside. So this had a terribly detrimental psychological impact on seniors, on children whose regular mojo was being messed up. You know, their normal had been interrupted. There's a certain cadence that children are used to in terms of going to class and being with their teachers and learning and working on projects. And all of that was upended. And these children were just like, what is this? What is going on? Is this what's happening?
Like PTSD,
And so,
you know?
Yeah, it's like being in the twilight zone for 18 months and then coming out with the expectation that just people can pick up where they left off. We still need stimulus packages.
Right.
There still needs to be an economic stimulus. They should not be ending the extra money for unemployment. The country is not economically solvent. They have not cured this breach, and people still need food, and they're living outdoors and winter's coming up. What are you going to do with that?
Well,
And then they're saying that there's this new variant that is worse than the one we had. Excuse me.
People live, one of the things I've noticed is that people live in different worlds.
Definitely.
No, realities, different realities.
Different realities, yeah. Well, I mean, their reality and their world is completely different than other people. Last year, there were 660 new billionaires created in this country. Think about that for a second.
Crazy.
Right.
660 new.
During the worst economic crisis we've seen in 30 years.
Elon Musk went from having $30 billion, now he's the second richest person. Jeff Bezos doubled his money. Warren Buffett gave away 40 billion. He's still the 4th richest person,
Right.
So I mean, there was so much money that was created, but because of the economic system, it didn't really reach everybody like it should have reached everybody.
Well, and I mean, on the other end of the spectrum, I finally got my wish. I've always wanted to go see Harper's Ferry. I saw a picture of it in a magazine. I said, it is such a charming, place. I know it took place in Harper's Ferry as well, many, many years ago, with the John Brown standing up for, people who
tell us that story. Tell us that story
I beg your
for
pardon?
those. Can you sort of encapsulate that story for those of us who may not be?
I will try. I know that John Brown was an abolitionist during the 1800s, I believe, and he was during the Civil War. He was against slavery, and he put together a band of individuals who were intent on ending it. Making our country, our nation, realize that this was not a sustainable proposition. This was not the way that we needed to go. and they went about the business. They were going to took their militias to do business with these people, with anyone on the countryside, and people died, you know, in the course of him trying to make his statement. And they caught up with him at the Harper's Ferry, the arsenal
Harper's
there,
Ferry.
and they summarily killed him. But he was standing up for
Lynched him, I think, yeah.
justice. He was standing up for what was right. I don't say it's right for, you know, people to die like that, because that was terrible.
They
But,
have a landmark. They have a landmark.
Slavery was terrible. Slavery was terrible. Black people died, millions and millions of them, after, you know, working as conscripted, a non-compensated, a racialized bounty, a chattel for white folks for centuries. And it went on. And, you know, they like to say that there were no insurrections. There were plenty of insurrections. People didn't, Black people, the Africans did not just lay down and let them, you know, do it whatever they wanted. Some of them,
anywhere, colonialism, one of the most insidious, I think, factors regarding colonialism is that whole races of people were wiped out by other people. Like on the island of Tasmania, you know, they wiped out just about every Tasmanian.
Australia,
They had a policy there called White Australia, where they took the Aboriginal babies and put them with white New Zealand. All the native New Zealanders are just about gone. And then the same thing for the Native Americans.
Forget the indigenous American Indians here.
Yeah,
who
yeah.
So many of them died.
Right,
made them walk from the
Yeah.
South Carolinas to Oklahoma in the
Yeah,
worst.
cheers, yeah.
See, a lot of the Native Americans were Black people. Someone shared a picture with me with Mike of some of his ancestors who were, I think, Seminole, right, Mike? Were they Seminole Indians?
No, Creek Indians. They were
Creek,
Cherokee.
yeah.
Creek Indians in Alabama.
Yeah. So there were a lot of Black people who had already been here prior to slavery, who were landowners. And, you know, colonialism just kind of moved them all to Oklahoma, where they had set up a reservation. Yeah.
Gentrified them.
Gentrification, yeah. And this
And it was
happened-
gentrification with ethnic cleansing. That's what
exactly
those
what it
two
was.
parts need to be put
Yeah.
together.
Yeah, that's what it
Yes.
was. And I think there's been a lot of ethnic cleansing. You know, Hitler was one that we hear about the most, but King Leopold of Belgium killed, what, 10 million?
With his wall of decapitated heads.
Leopold III.
Leopold III, okay.
Because it was a couple of more Leopold, but Leopold III, it was the one that made the Congo the whole Congo his plantation and killed over 30 million Black people.
And I think
How does one man kill 30 million people and no one is called to account? How does one man kill 6 million people and no one is called to account? That's why the Jews are so hell-bent on making these people pay reparations and restitution and never allowing anyone on the planet to forget what happened to them. What happened to them?
And I think that's important. And that the lesson to be learned there is that, you know,
It is.
When you don't remember what happened, you can repeat the same thing over again. You know,
Here we go again.
That's why we have to fight. That is why we have to fight to make sure that there is a viable African-American museum in every major city where Black people exist in this country.
Well, one of the other things is too about that with the Holocaust and stuff, because we went to a Jewish high school basically, and that's all. We had all the Jewish holidays plus with the Christian holidays, so we had that. But we find out in history that in the Holocaust there was 50 to 100,000 Black people that were executed and killed. They were killing Black people on the spot. They didn't gather them up. They shot them. They went in their houses, in Germany. And they were part of the Holocaust too.
They killed Black people, they killed homosexual people, they killed
Jewish
disabled people, they killed mentally infirm people, they killed old people, they killed children. They threw children into a blazing mass grave fire. And the women did not find out till the next morning. All they knew is that they heard the horrible, horrible screams of these babies and these children. And it's unbelievable that with all of that, we have not learned the lessons in terms of how to be human toward one another and how to treat each other, how to speak to each other,
How to be
and
neighbors.
how to treasure each other. We've not learned that lesson. We've not
Well,
learned it
I
from
think-
slavery.
Yeah, I
And
think,
slavery was the precursor for everything. If you want to talk about Guantanamo, look at slavery. If you want to talk about what happened, the Nazis said that at the Nuremberg trials. They said, we learned all this from the way you treat the Black folks in your country.
well, you
you
know,
know.
apartheid in South Africa, they got that from the South. They got that from the Southern United States.
It all emanates from slavery,
They-
every
like you
last
say,
drop of it.
You got,
We
yeah.
were the litmus test for how to mistreat a human being, how to murder a human being.
Well, I think, you know, one of the things that always comes to mind is that, you know, having gone through all that, you know, we're still here.
We survived, yeah.
And we're
Ain't it a
thriving.
miracle?
And we're
It- it's
thriving.
a-
So, you know, I had one gentleman who told me, he said, well, you know, I think, you know, the you know, what is it? Darwin's law of, what is the law of the survival of the fittest?
Relativity.
Yeah, or so the
Survival of the fittest.
survival of the fittest. That the ones of us that are still here, you know, we're still here, still
By the
striving.
grace of God.
But,
You know,
but you know,
grace of
my
God,
thing
still
is this,
striving. Mhm.
is that we're still here,
Mm.
but what we're doing with here,
Right.
That's a good
what kind
point.
of change, what kind of changes are we making? What, you know, what type of information are we transmitting? You know, we, like you say, we here, but we got to be more than here.
We got to do more than survive. We got to thrive too. Yeah.
That's a
We got to
thrive.
thrive.
That's true.
What was very interesting to me was an event held at the Black History Museum. Frances Caldwell's the executive director over there, and she and her cohorts put on a post-Juneteenth kind of mini conference where you had speakers come forth. I was there. She asked me to speak because one of the keynote speakers, he's not feeling well right now, but that's
that
Brother
yesterday?
Abdul Latif. Yes, but one of the interesting things, the most interesting thing about it is she had Zoom media hookups in Ghana, in Senegal. There were Black gentlemen in all of these cities. Her son in Brazil and another gentleman in China who are talking about these colonies, these villages, these colony-sized villages of Black people who have, you know, expatriated and left the United States to start up these communities and go where they can, you know, find some peace and own some land and buy a house that they own and build a house, or, you know, buy an island. And all of these gentlemen were talking about, you know, these opportunities that are taking place where Black people are just merely getting up and leaving. I guess they're maintaining, and he maintains dual citizenship, I'm sure, but we're tired.
Mhm.
It's an indication that, you know, after 20, 30, 40, 50 years and nothing's changed, and then after we read that after 400, you know, some odd years, nothing has changed in terms of improving significantly the life conditions of the people and their families and our safety. When we look at Black men, George Floyd being, you know, desecrated on a public street in broad daylight in front of people who, the young lady that filmed it, thank God for her, who has now been given a Pulitzer. And these things are like everyday events. You know, these random gang shootings, everyday events, this homelessness, this miseducation. Oh, the children can't pass a proficiency. Oh, that's nonsense. So people are reinventing their own, or creating their own reality because they know that there is something that can be different. Can you imagine an entire colony of Black people in the China-Russia border? I mean, this gentleman was talking about it. He said, this is happening. And, you know, I was lifted by that. And the United States needs to look at that, because what message are we conveying when the conditions here in this country are so horrible, so irretractably terrible in terms of just having peace of mind and having your little black psyche intact and not having to look on the TV every day and see a black man being strung up or lynched or murdered. All of these things, you know, people are tired. They're tired. If they don't understand it, I can't help them. But as I was going through Harper's Ferry, I wanted to add this just real quick. We passed by houses that were big as City Hall. People living there, you know, there are mansions that are bigger than, you know, our children could imagine. And those people don't have a clue about what is really going on, because their lives are so insular. They're so insulated from any of this seeping in. So, you know, when people get on the television and they talk about and they complain or make mention of these things, they probably don't even, they have no conscience.
Like I said, I think people live in different worlds, and they really do. You know, that's just like, you know, we were talking the other day, I was talking to my cousin of mine about professional athletes. And, you know, and I grew up in Detroit when I was younger. And when I was younger in our neighborhood, you know, Diana Ross lived a block down. Smokey Robinson lived 2 blocks over. Dinah Washington lived a block over. And you would see these people every day, like in a grocery store, like they were regular people. But now a lot of celebrities, you know, and professional athletes, they live in gated communities, you know, and just like rich other, you know, people of means, you know, and they don't live in the same world with everybody else. And people who are wealthy, I mean, they do not live in the same world as everybody else, because they have the means, you know, they have the means of something, you know, if something goes haywire, they can just go somewhere else.
Exactly.
You know, they can go somewhere else, and everybody can't do that, you know. And I think that I think, you know, the economic system, we've had shows, we've talked about this before, you know, about the wealth, the transfer of wealth. And there's been such a massive transfer of wealth. Pretty soon people can't afford, and it's already happening. People can't afford to buy what the industrialists are making. They
can't even, right, exactly.
Yeah.
They can't even rent houses. Houses now cost, you know, $2,000 to rent. That was a house note back in the day. So what do you, and then, you know, this, and a lot of these market forces are being manipulated by the banks and by the mortgage companies and by the wealth elite. They're being manipulated when, you know, 500 people show up to buy a house and they're willing to pay cash for, you know, a house. That is unheard of. That's unheard of. The market has always been solvent and flush with properties, real properties that did not cost an astronomical amount. And
we have a lot of corporations buying houses now. A lot of corporations are buying houses.
And unfortunately, a lot of them are buying them for foreign nationals. So they're straw men who are buying them for foreign nationals. Right. This is happening.
Yeah.
This is happening. And they'll have us all living in closets. But, you know, people have to stand up too. Makeda used to say that the culpability rests with the people to listen. And as Queen Ilanit says at Family First, she says that there is no excuse nowadays for, you know, ignorance. There is such a dearth of information. You got your libraries, you got online, you know, social media presence where people are exposing people to all kinds of things, and cable and newspapers and publications, periodicals, all of that. So the information is there. It is shows like programs like this and the ones that other folks are doing that are valuable, necessary, and for people's survival. This is survival information. This is not we're not just having a show. Makeda said she doesn't do shows. She does programming, you know, educational programming. And that's what this is. So, carry
So
on.
what do you
gentlemen.
say? What do you say to the younger generation? Because I don't know, obviously some of the younger generation, you have some people that are really, doing good things and doing a lot of positive things.
Right.
But you have even more people that just, I mean, it's almost like they've given up. And I don't know, we talked about that too. My wife and I talked about, and my daughters, moving to Africa. And we actually, we weren't
Really?
we decided we were going to move, but we had known people that went over there, and then Verl's got a buddy that keeps trying to get me to come over there, and
Right.
and a couple other people said, oh, you can come over for free and stay for a month and go around and check it out, but we really like to have you guys,
And like Stevie Wonder's moving to Ghana,
yeah, one lady told me, said this was your home before your home where you live at now. This is your home.
Right.
So,
Right.
I kind of feel like, or we kind of feel like, we have some work to do here in terms of educating
Right.
the youth.
I want to ask Diddy
We
a question.
do. We
Yeah.
do. There's a couple things. I sent go ahead. Do you want to
Yeah, go
say
ahead,
something,
Mike.
sir?
It's kind of, it's about the subject, but it's not, what we're talking about now. But I wanted to know, what was your experience at Beaumont?
It was most of the students there were very welcoming. I didn't experience prejudice a lot. There were certain things that did happen, a few things that did happen that threw me off balance. But by and large, it's an excellent institution. I had a lot of African American friends who attended, and they've all distinguished themselves as scholars in advertising and surgery and education and what have you. They have gone on into the stratosphere with their disciplines once they graduated and went on. I did not graduate from Beaumont. I went through halfway through the 12th grade and I left there. At that point, I was considered the black sheep, and I actually graduated from the Muslim school in Cleveland. I had to do quite a bit longer to do that, but that's where I graduated from.
The one on Holton?
The one in Holton, yes, yes.
Okay.
Hey, Jenny, one time you were invited to speak at Harvard, I remember. What was that like?
I always wanted to go to Harvard University, and that opportunity came up in 1995, I think. I was contacted by adjuncts from the city of Cleveland who, asked me if I wanted to go to a public policy institute at the John F. Kennedy School for Government at Harvard University. And I said, of course I do. And so for 2 weeks, and it's funny because I was the only person on public assistance at the time, but all the rest were distinguished as directors or economic development this or that or the other, or CIA folks. We had a couple of those in there. So FBI people. And it was amazing. We reviewed case studies, political case studies relating to housing and wages and jobs and education and employment and the criminalization issue, all of that. And at that time, the AIDS issue was raging. So we looked at that from a public policy perspective. And Dr. Peter Zimmerman was in charge. He was the director of the John F. Kennedy School of Government at the time. And he brought in a bunch of fascinating professors from Columbia and MIT and what have you. And it was a 2-week, they spent like upwards of $1 million for 2 people to come from every state to participate in that policy institute. And it was fascinating. It gave me a different perspective in terms of how the people who manipulate the arms of government, how they perceive things and how it works. So, yeah, but it was quite fascinating. And a Hudster, one of the directors from Washington told me, he says, we gave the city officials very explicit instructions in terms of why we wanted you to come. Your coming here was no accident, and we are responsible for that. And he let me know, which I thought was, I said,
That's good. Yeah.
but it was great. It was great.
Now, moving forward, we spent a lot of time and we sort of know what a lot of the issues are. So how do we move forward? Obviously through education, trying to,
electing the right
these
leaders.
issues- Elected, okay.
Activism.
Well, I think all of that is part of it. I'm a student of Makeda Judkins University, and she was a media education specialist. Who taught
she was my
you
mother.
know who Makeda was, right?
She was my mother's best friend. So
Okay, so
she
and
was
your
over to the
mother,
house.
your mother and your aunt were amazing. They were the bomb. I'm
Yeah,
telling
she-
you,
she was
the
my
three of
mother's
those
best
people could
friend.
have taken over the world.
Yeah.
They actually could have taken over the world. But she talked about the need at this juncture before she passed away for authentic Black narratives and authentic Black media. She said that is seminal. She said if that doesn't happen, because we're getting all of our information, we're getting all of our narratives, we're getting all of the information that we spew back out from individuals who do not have vested interest in our life conditions and our futures, many of them. So she said that authentic Black media is paramount. She says, and Dr. Onion Palmer would add to that a national network of Black academic academies for African American children, just like the Jewish contingent has. That's imperative. Working through the Black church, we have the Black church as one of the oldest, most viable institutions. It is a national network. We need to do that. We must ensure that we have an African American museum that is viable in every city in this country where Black people reside, so that they can come in and learn about what happened and learn about it in an academic way. And we've had some great Black studies departments here in Cleveland at Cuyahoga Community College when Professor Wilbert Nichols and Dr. Sylvester Davis, and I cannot think of the wonderful female professor that I had, but because that was so long ago. But those departments were seminal. That is where I got my, historical footing about what happened. They defunded those departments. They took them apart. They're falling apart was not an accident. It was very deliberative, just like they defund East Cleveland and they defund Black neighborhoods. They defunded them, and they were viable places for Black families, Black communities to organize and to educate themselves, and they must be reconstituted.
A lot of my education of myself as a Black person, I didn't get from school. I used to go to the Phyllis Wheatley organization. I got from Makeda Judkins. There was a place on 93rd called the Moorish American Institute.
I used to go there.
Mhm.
And I
Van,
learned, I learned about all the things that, because, when you're a kid and in those days, you thought that Black people's history started with slavery.
Right.
And I learned about all the civilizations of Africa, and at the time when Africa had basically colonized the world, and that's why you had Black Chinese, dark-skinned Japanese.
You had Alexander Pushkin, you had Hannibal, you had Mansa Musa,
South
you had
America,
pyramids in Egypt, you had those huge stone heads of African American, the Olmec Society.
Right.
All of these wonderful things that Black people erected and put up. There's a church in Africa. I don't know the exact country, but it is thousands of years old. The oldest university in the world is in Africa. All of these magnificent things,
and
that
when you
relate
learn
directly to us.
and when you learn those things, you kind of see yourself differently.
And
That's
you know,
important.
this was one of the, absolutely, sir.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things about Beaumont, and I'm sure it was consistent with other white public, Catholic, parochial rather, and public schools, is the fact that, you know, I had a 500-page book about American history. Slavery was 25 pages from start to top to bottom. It was not until I ran into Dr. Nichols at Tri-C that I found out about this vast repository of information, a Schomburg's worth of information that exists right here in this country. You know, he was telling us about what's in the National Archives, where, you know, only PhDs at a certain level can go in there and review about the lynchings. And Emma Coleman Jordan came to us years ago and spoke at the moot court at CSU about the lynchings. And I remember so many other folk got up and walked out because they just didn't want to be confronted with that information. But it was amazing the conditions under which Black people were summarily just snatched off the street and murdered, and children and babies. And she brought it. She's from Georgetown University. She got a Juris Doctorate, and she was absolutely fantastic. You know,
but I think it's important, like you say, it's important to remember those things.
Well, we're having a debate about critical race theory now,
Yeah.
because it makes other people feel uncomfortable.
But critical
I'm
race
sure,
theory,
Emmett Till
critical race
felt
theory,
uncomfortable.
yeah, but critical race theory is something that's taught in graduate school. It's not something that gets taught in high school. And
Well, there's
most people
ways
that are
to
talking
teach.
about
There's
it,
probably ways to teach
yeah.
it. Right. They're
most
not
people
going
that are
to
talking
go in
about
and
it
take
don't
a
really
deep dive.
understand what it is, and they're taking
Mhm.
a few words and they're trying to twist it to use to their advantage, their political advantage. And what they're really saying is that, you know, I shouldn't feel bad. I'm not responsible for your condition, you know, but that's not what critical race theory is about. You know, it's not
Right.
it's not about blaming white people for,
Right.
you know, for
Absolutely
everything that's
not.
wrong in America. That's not what it's about. But if you listen to some Republicans, that's what they say it's about, and that's not what it's about. You know, I think you know, in any society, whoever rules that society is going to teach through the lens that they see through. You know, whether it's, you know, the colonizers of this country, whether it was the English when it went through to Australia. And I think inherent in that, there's going to be some lopsidedness in the way things get taught, you know. So I don't think it's, you know, it's not something that's so far-fetched, you know, that
Right.
it's mostly something that, like I say, it doesn't get taught. It gets taught in grad school, and I think they've tried to co-opt that and use it for their own purposes. And it's not even about what they're saying.
That's because some folks are still doing so much wrong. They're still engaged in the brutality that is a huge section of what that entails. You know, they get upset. We have to turn the TV on every day. Sandra Bland, Tatiana Jefferson, Breonna Taylor, Eleanor Bumpurs, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Amadou Diallo, Timothy Ray Russell, and Melissa Williams, Tamir Rice. Every day we have to turn on the television set, or it comes out the radio about, you know, somebody with a broken tail light, or, you know, this, that, and the other, and their lives were taken and no one was called to account. Something is wrong with that. We have to stand up and talk about it and say so, and not allow them to people to just get a pass.
That's what we're talking about. You know, the Republicans talking about pro-life. If you're pro-life, you're supposed to be pro-life all the way around, not just the unborn, but also the people that's, you know, that's here already.
Right.
You talk
Pro-life,
about
and
abortion.
you have homeless people in every city in this country sitting up there, sleeping outside, winter, spring, summer, fall, relieving themselves outside. And you know what I mean? You know, sitting up here getting beat or shot or molested in every city in this country.
Right. And Jenny, then they say we don't have the money, but
yet they talk about right to life.
The defense, the
Right.
money we spend on defense is so big, more than the next 26 industrialized countries combined. So why can't we cut that budget in half and address these social problems?
Well, I don't
Well,
think they
it's a
really want
question
to.
of political will. It's not money, as Dr. Whitaker said. Yes, I wish people could have heard him, but it was videotaped. Robert and Verl and Mr. Blue, if you have an opportunity to hear his piece on why all this is happening, talk to Francis and try to play snippets of that and then have a discussion. It was profound.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
Well,
it was profound.
it's been a great, lively discussion. It's always nice when we can learn new things. I've certainly learned some things.
I as well.
Hopefully, our viewers, you've learned some things too. And we, appreciate you watching. And we try to bring you the truth. And if you don't agree with us, let us know that, because we're not perfect. We're the three wise men, but we're not the three perfect men. So if you would like to be on the show sometime, please let us know that, because this is an open forum, and all we ask is that you be respectful, but we cover a lot of subjects that people tend to shy away from. But this is who we are, and we have to cover some things that are important to everybody. Verl, you got anything to say in closing?
Ms. Mitchell, thank you so much for joining us. I've wanted you on the show for a while now, but you definitely brought it today and brought a lot of good information. Also wanted to mention that we want to get back into talking about leadership. Mike Shomo is running for Councilman Award 4, and I think he's got the right attitude and tenaciousness to make some good things happen and revise and restore that community.
Return to glory, because we know how it used to be, and it can be like that again. I'll probably never dunk a basketball again, and you might still, Mike, because you're pretty tall, but other than dunking a basketball, we can take some things back and make them better than the way they were. Mike?
All right, thanks, Verl, for mentioning that, and don't forget to vote for Mike Shomo, to build a better Ward 4. I appreciate you, Ms. Mitchell, coming on and sharing your thoughts and your adventures with us, and hope you come back again. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and remember those in Ward 4, even if you're not in Ward 4, tell your friends and family, even your enemies, to vote for Mike Shomo, for councilman. Thank you.
Hey, Mike, when is the primary? When do people
Primary is September 15th.
Okay, and they can get absentee ballots?
Yes, that's what we're getting ready to do next week, is passing out the absentee ballots.
Okay, so you can request an absentee ballot, vote for Mike,
Right.
without having to leave your house. How cool is that? Okay, well, I want to thank you for watching.
I appreciate it.
We appreciate your time. Unfortunately, ours is up, but until next week, stay safe, and we hope to see you again. And
Thanks,
Jen,
Jen.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm sure
Thank
you'll be
you, John.
back. I'm sure you'll be back
Good night.
if you so want to. Okay, good night. Bye-bye.
Good night.